What up, everybody? This is your boy Blak Magus, and I did a video talking about why I don't talk about gaming like I used to, and now I'm gonna do a video talking about gaming. In particular, the PlayStation 5, and I wanted to do this back when it came out. It's funny because going back to the video where I talk about why I don't talk about gaming, it was actually this that kind of inspired me to say, you know what, I need to do a YouTube video, and hence the check-in. But PlayStation 5 Pro was announced. All the bells and whistles it has and whatnot. The biggest focus is the pricing. It's going to be $700 when it comes out, and of course, people lost their mind. Mostly those people who just want to have another reason to do some toxic shit and talk about the console wars and all that. But, there are people who also genuinely reacted to that in a visceral way, because seeing that price, yeah, that seems crazy. Well, you better get used to fucking crazy, y'all, because welcome to the modern age of gaming, and it's been slow rolling to us for a while now with the raising gaming costs, which, again, I'm one of the people who look at that and laugh at people complaining about games being $70 instead of $60, when, being the old man that I am, I remember begging and crying to my mom to get, The Legend of Zelda, and her looking at me like I'm a fool, which, God bless you in your soul, miss you, Mom, but you were so fucking right. Now that I'm an adult, I know why you were looking at me like a fool and, scoffing at the idea of paying $80 back in the fucking 80s for a goddamn video game. Like, knowing what I know now, having an understanding of things like inflation, and knowing, the relative costs compared to where we're at now, y'all gotta realize, and I've said it before, we've been seriously blessed over the last 20 or so odd years when it comes to gaming. The idea of standardized pricing when, I forget what it was, when the first PlayStation came out, I want to say $40 or $50 was the standard cost for most games, across the board. And it's just you got to the PS2 and the Xbox 360 era, and there still was the standard, until it jumped up to $60 a game. And then it maintained to be $60 a game between, PlayStation 3, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 4 Pro, all the other Xbox variations of the Xbox One that came out. Things stayed at 60 for a good while, between two generations at least, I want to say. And you never had that consistency. There was never until the PlayStation and the original Xbox, and all that came out. There wasn't the standard pricing rates. It was whatever, because Nintendo and Sega would just charge you on what they thought the game was worth, not how much games should cost. Again, Zelda was $80, where I can probably fucking, if I think about it, I could have got 10-yard fight for maybe 40, 50. Final Fantasy, 3, which is Final Fantasy 6 actually. That was another one of those games that, when it came out, it was considered an $80 game or something, if I remember right, because RPGs will tend to cost more, especially if they were popular RPGs like Zelda, like Final Fantasy and things like that. Because I don't think the original Final Fantasy, the first one that came out in the States, was more than $40, maybe 50 tops. But you got that, certain games cost you a certain amount. depending on what it was, and if the franchise became popular, then prices would raise. Yeah, that's how it was. There was no standard pricing market. It was a Wild Wild West. So when you got to the more modern consoles in the late 90s, early 2000s, that was a blessing. So going up $10, like, I still see that as a win, because you at least know across the board, whatever you're getting, like, you're paying a set price, as opposed to what they could do is like, hey, Madden is one of the most popular franchises out right now. If EA wanted to charge $100 for it, it would, like, be fucked up, but they had to have an argument because that game is super popular and they know y'all gonna want that shit. So they're gonna take advantage of that shit. You know what I mean? Or same thing with something like Call of Duty. Call of Duty, for some reason, I will never understand this, by the way, and I know I've said this plenty of times before, I still maintain that energy towards Call of Duty. Why the fuck y'all keep buying this shit every fucking year? Beyond me. Same thing with Madden. But they could do the same thing too, and have like a particular price because this is a super popular thing, It's just like with clothing. When a brand becomes super popular, what do? They fucking raise their prices. Jordans, y'all paying $200 plus for fucking like a brand. Not necessarily for, something that's superior in every which way, in quality, and what that does something other than be what it is, but you pay for the fucking name. So yeah, Also, just a window into like human mentality, because we accept certain things in certain areas, but we don't in other areas. But again, that's me going into my business and my social classes that I've taken in college. Hey guys, I got to use this bachelor's in business for something. So why not use it on my content? Anyway, I do use it in my job, by the way. So I'm not it wasn't a wasted degree for me to get. But yeah, so we're getting to that point where $700 is probably going to be the typical standard, especially when you look at how console development has gone and certain things in the market for electronics. Like, the pandemic fucked a lot of shit up, for one. Having that limitation of, access to the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series consoles because of, manufacturing limitations, people not being able to go to work, things like that. The raise in prices, the cost of components that we saw, like the super surge in certain things, in particular in graphics chips, that's all now coming to bear with this pricing. And you also have to look at natural inflation, where again, like, we say certain things like, shit didn't used to cost as much, but again, going back as a child, knowing that my mom paying $250 for an NES, taking that and putting it against today's money, she's probably paying like $600-700. When you account for cost of living, wages, all that shit from back in the day. Like, again, y'all bringing out the business aspect of me, y'all still don't seem to like understand like some basic components of life. Is that we still got like a $7.75 federal minimum wage in 2024. The federal minimum wage was set back in the early 90s under Bill Clinton presidency, his first run. Like, people are now screaming about $15 an hour. $15 an hour ain't what $15 an hour was fucking 10 years ago. Things like that. So the fact that we're just getting now to a $700 console as the price and what may be the standard price, it's somewhat amazing, because these console companies were always working at a loss. when it comes to console, because they always banked on the fact that, hey, we can work at this loss because we'll make it back up in the fees for publishing and the money that we make off of game sales. But two things that happen, again, pandemic being part of this, you've seen production slow down. You've seen the cost of gaming production go up, and you see the reaction with the layoffs and things like that. And now these companies are trying to figure out, like, how can we make the games that we used to make at a lesser cost, and what do we have to sacrifice? And if you sacrifice the people, you sacrifice time, speed. Sure, you could try to rehire people at a lower rate, but again, as I said in previous content, the pandemic has taught a lot of people to know their worth, to know their limits, and to know what they're willing to and they're not willing to accept. People haven't gotten back to the desperation that a lot of businesses rely on for people to. A lot of people are like exploring other options, trying to find different avenues, maybe going to other industries that treat them better, things like that. They're, so between layoffs and just losing people who are generally sick and fucking tired of the bullshit, these gaming companies have to figure out different ways, and all that stuff adds up to this $700 console. And really quick, I told people a long time ago, years ago, back when the PS4 and Xbox One came out, what we're getting to now anyway at this point in stage of consoles, is the return on what you pay for is going to seem much, much smaller as we go along, because we've hit a point now where visually, technically, things are getting to where it's the minor details. It's going to be like, remember when PS5 and Xbox Series consoles came out, the big buzzword was ray tracing. I remember, like, in the middle of like all of that, teraflops was the big buzzword. And it's just like, this is shit that none of y'all as gamers, like, let's be honest, nobody as a gamer really fucking care about that. Unless you're a super technical, nerd, you don't fucking care about that shit. It becomes a thing because you fucking heard it and you've like been told this is the shit that you should worry about, and fuck it, you're gonna go with it because it helps build content, especially if you're a toxic content creator. So, but at the end of the day, nobody cares about that shit. Like, we want to know, what's the games? Are they good games? Do they look good? Do they run well? Boom. And we've gotten to the point now, like I said, all that fucking, detail shit, the like extra thing, like, the lighting of the eyes, the movements of the lips, the ability to transition through like scenes without load screens and things like that. Like, this is where we're at. This is the only thing these are the things that we're getting from the consistent upgrading of consoles, to the point where now, like, as I was saying to a friend, it's getting to the point now where, like, the thoughts of buying a PC is becoming more and more attractive to people, because you're having these companies put their games on PC now. Like, Sony doesn't do it as frequent as Microsoft does, but if you're willing to wait a year or two and you know that Sony is willing to put stuff on PC, you can get a gaming PC, which, real quick, costs for those aren't as great, but if you know what you're doing, if you know what you want, you can make a decent enough PC at an affordable cost that will last you for at least a decade, if not more. But it's a more inviting thing, because you can buy that, you can know that it'll play everything that comes out within a certain period of time, and you don't have to worry about when the next console is going to come up in the bump. But even in that, like I said, costs have gone up. The graphic cards are fucking ridiculous. If you want to, especially if you're somebody who wants to keep up with the Jones and have the most modern versions of everything. But that's what it is to with consoles. Because if you want the most modern version of the console, get ready to keep paying out the ass. You're going to see, like with cell phones and a lot of other things in technology, you're going to get to the point where you're going to be like, damn, this console is $1,000. Unless the companies decide, like, we've had enough, we're not trying to make these things, there's going to be $1,000 console in our future. It's just inevitable. Now, whether or not it continues past that, it's going to be just like, again, looking at cell phones and other technology. How fucking, invested are you in on that community to keep it going that way? People who love Apple will do that shit and stand in lines every year to get the latest Apple and not blink an eye. And it's been over $1,000 for a fucking iPhone for longer than it has been like a standard to pay $500 for a console. I know that much. So paying $700, like the visceral reaction and stuff like that, it's a lot of it is fake and phony and just contrived because of the console wars and toxicity and all that. But for a lot of us, we just gotta get used to that reality and know that, like, yeah, it seems crazy, it seems wild, but this is the reality. Inflation is the real thing. There's natural inflation. Things go up in cost naturally. Not usually at this big a jump, but we're at a junction in life where, again, this will take, like, having a discussion about the intricacies of the business and things like that. Far beyond, I know a lot of you would want to have, where it's like, yeah, this is how it's going to go, and this is where it's going to be patterned. And, it just is what it is. You know what I mean? To end on that note, as I've done several videos lately, it is what it is. Like, there's going to be an adjustment period. We'll see how this works. If the response is very negative and it doesn't sell as well as they want, it's going to be curious to see how Sony reacts to this. It's going to be curious to see how consumers react to this, because I think that a lot of people will end up buying this just to have the new. You know what I mean? Including all the people who are making the videos trashing Sony, just to have the new. Yeah. And I'm curious to see how this affects the PC market, because, hey, people are more willing to make that jump. This may be where we get to the point where even the console development companies themselves have said that where the hardware is going to eventually go away and they'll just transition to be publishers. We'll see. Anyway, as always, you guys, feel free to hit me up. Let me know what you're thinking. I'll talk to you later. This your boy Blak Mason, I'm out. Deuces.